To my far right is Audrey Choi, who's the CEO of the Institute for Sustainable Investing at Morgan Stanley. And to my immediate right is Dulski, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Change.org. Show of hands, how many in the audience know Change? Oh, look at that. Look at that. Your job is done. But we are going to be talking about sustainable investing and mainly focusing on how it differs from philanthropy as we know it. And just one other side note, sustainable investing, impact investing is becoming much more mainstream, but just like other things that are newly mainstream, there's a whole lot of us who don't really know what it's all about. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well today. So I'm going to first open it up and just talking about both of you have had impressive and interesting careers. But how did you each end up in the social goods space? And Audrey with a financial corporation and Jennifer with a B Corp. So maybe we'll start with Audrey.
Sure. So I think it was definitely an evolution. So I'm a sort of multi-career person, non-traditional banker, never expected to end up working at a firm like the one I work at. My first career was, well, I should preface it, I majored in college in comparative literature. And if you had asked my college self what I would be doing today, my goal was to become a professor, hopefully at a university that had a major airport, in literature or philosophy of language, so completely esoteric. Ended up through the accident of history and fate, becoming deeply passionate about political economy and its effect on people's lives, because I ended up living in Germany the last year that East Germany existed as a country. So I've now totally dated myself. Anyway, long story short, I ended up deciding that since I could write, that would be the way that I would try to impact the world. And I became a reporter and foreign correspondent for the Wall Street Journal and got to do post-reunification coverage in Germany for many years. After about 7 years as a journalist, I realized that I was starting to actually not be the best reporter on the stories I cared most about, because I started over-reporting and was dying to get in the mix. And so I ended up decided to leave journalism. I ended up going into government. Was really fortunate to have the opportunity to serve for about 6 years during the Clinton administration in a number of different positions. And then I decided that actually, in terms of social change, that there was enormous potential to do it from the private sector seat. I felt like I had sat across from the private sector as a journalist interrogating CEOs. I had tried to collaborate with CEOs for public-private partnerships when in government, and that it was time to try to finally harness the power, the speed, and the money of the private sector for the purpose of social change and profits.
My turn, yeah. I also had a little bit of a different start to my career. I feel like I have always had some interest in social change from when I was a child. I actually did a lot of teaching and tutoring. I grew up in San Francisco, and one of the things I did all through my high school years was tutor people who were brand new to San Francisco and learning English, kids at other high schools. And then I majored in psychology, and my first job was as a high school teacher. And I started a nonprofit to help kids be the first in their families to go to college, which, as I think most of us know, is the main factor that can break the cycle of poverty in people's families. And I loved that. I actually thought that I would end up a teacher, and someday I think I might end up a college professor too. But what got to me about it was that I couldn't scale it. I was running a nonprofit, and I could serve 100 kids a year. I actually raised $1 million for that nonprofit in the first couple years, which was a lot for a fledgling nonprofit, but it just didn't feel like it would scale. So my path took me into the internet, where, and dating myself too, I was one of the first 400 people at Yahoo, and I thought, this is it. Like, this is the way to create impact at scale. And it was in those days. In fact, it was so cool to work at Yahoo in those days. I didn't even tell people I worked there, because I thought it would be like showing off. So,
oh, that's great.
I had not yet learned about branding oneself. I spent 10 years there and then went to start my own company, which I like to say I had the really good failure experience. That company failed at least 3 times. I just refused to go home during those years. And eventually it was quite successful, and we sold it to Google. And after a couple years at Google, this opportunity at Change came my way. And for me, this is the perfect way to combine these two passions. The idea of doing something that really is impactful for the world, but doing it at internet scale is something that's really only available now today. And I'm lucky to be able to be one of the people who does it. And I think there's lots of you out there who either do or will do that as well.
Show of hands, how many of you have something in your life that's social good? You know, are you on, look at that. See, it is mainstream, or at least that part of it. Well, when I was a child, I wanted to be an astronaut, so I'm the one that veered way off course. So I have not gone to space yet, but I still have time. Audrey, can you tell us a bit specifically about how Morgan Stanley's Institute for Sustainable Investing makes its investments and what you look for? And how is it different from the company just writing, you know, the traditional checkbook philanthropy, for instance?
Well, so there are a couple of things to be clear, and I know our name may be sometimes confusing. So at Morgan Stanley, what I do with the Institute for Sustainable Investing is we are not directly writing checks to individual companies or philanthropies. What we're really trying to do is to galvanize, I mean, to your theme of scale, we thought a lot about where can a player like Morgan Stanley have the most effect. And it wasn't going to be us writing individual philanthropic checks or trying to change a policy, because that's just not what people come to us for. That's not where we have the leverage. Where we have the leverage is the fact that we're a major international capital markets player. We have the largest network of financial advisors on the planet, about 16,500 financial advisors advising 4 million people with more than $2 trillion of assets. And then in addition, we have an investment bank and investment management. And so we really thought, look, if we can start working not on millions of dollars of grants or tens of millions of dollars of really interesting, artisanally crafted investments that are not scalable, but if instead we can say, how do we get some of that $2 trillion to be thinking about environmental impact, about social impact, about creating change. That's how we're going to do it. And then it's, well, look, if we're going to go to our core clients who have come to Morgan Stanley not because they think about Morgan Stanley as the leading agent of social change, but because they think about Morgan Stanley as a responsible steward of their capital, we said, if we want to get that capital, we have to figure out what are the ways where I can say to you as a client, here's ways to absolutely invest your money so you can save for college, save for retirement, build your wealth, and reflect your values. So what we've actually done is we've created a whole platform of products that we call Investing with Impact. So maybe going back to my semantics literature, background, instead of impact investing, we very strategically said investing with impact, and it can really include a broad range of ways that you can start to think about the positive impact you want your money to have, but that it's not just for someone who can be in a crazy, charismatic, wonderful, high-risk vehicle. It can be in your mutual funds, in your exchange-traded funds, in your regular accounts. So what we're really trying to do is, I think, really work very closely with all of our business units to say, please keep on doing, Mr. Banker, Mr. Trader, Mr. Fund Manager, please keep on doing what it is that you do best, and keep on being just as rigorous with yourself to go for high returns and good outcomes, and also think about the environmental and social impact. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we'll try to really sort of start moving the tanker ever so.
Sure.
And
what a great thing to be able to make money and do social good at the same time. Right. And it can be done. Yep. And clearly, can you mention a few investments that have been made over the years that?
So I think there's been a really huge range, but I think so I'd say two things first. One is I think what you just said about doing well and investing is so important that I think very often people feel like there's got to be a trade-off. That if you're making money, you must not be doing good. If you're doing good when making money, you must be sort of somehow taking a haircut on the money that you could make if you weren't talking about doing good. Yep. And where we're trying to focus on where those opportunities that do both. And so it's everything from, I think that in developing markets, there's a massive need for affordable quality housing for with no exaggeration, billions of people who need affordable quality housing or education or healthcare. And there are all these things where we have to really deliver more, better, and in different ways. And if you think about I'll just one quick vision of the future. The year 2050. There's going to be more, as opposed to today's 7 billion people on the planet, there'll be more than 9 billion people on the planet in 2050. The demands for food, water, energy will be about 50 or 40 or 50, 60% greater than today. The planet, the way we're currently using things, actually won't accommodate that. And you can say, well, it's 2050.
We'll
It's actually
figure it out by then, so.
35 years away. So hopefully in our lifetimes.
Probably yours, not mine.
Certainly
but
in our
anyway.
kids' lifetimes, and it's really quick. And if you think about what are the infrastructure investments that the world needs to make for clean water, better education, healthcare for those 9 billion people, cumulatively it represents what will be 4.5% of global GDP. So the entire world's economic activity, 5% of it is going to come from meeting those needs that we don't have today. So basically, the most powerful thing we say is, look, if you as an investor want to ignore 5% of total GDP, not GDP growth, 5% of total GDP, go ahead, but that's not a good investment.
Sign me up. I'll invest today. Jen, Change.org started as a traditional startup. You raised money from a variety of organizations such as the Omidyar. You are now in an interesting spot because you've had a great deal of success. You are the true social good. You're helping make change happen. So how do you go about finding investments?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know about Change.org, I'll give a little bit of background. We are the world's largest petition platform. We have today 77 million users around the world who wake up every day and think they can make a change. They start a petition, they mobilize others, and they convince decision makers to make the change that those petitions request. And we now win about 20 victories a day, so almost one an hour. And we have 30 million people of the 77 have signed a winning petition. So there is this element of scale and kind of a flywheel process that even people who aren't sure that they can make a change. And we ask petition starters at the beginning, do you think, how confident are you? And they often say they're not that confident. But then once they see someone else win, and once they sign something that wins, there's this cycle of saying, okay, well, if she did that, I can do that too. And a surprising fact just for this room, which is women start slightly fewer petitions than men, but they win more often. So that's right. So our first goal, though, is to make sure that we can sustainably scale the company on our own. So we generate revenue. We have 2 revenue models, and our goal is to grow the company by creating our own sustainable free cash flow. While we're in this process of really rapid growth, the same way many other startups have, we need additional investment beyond our own revenue. And so we go to we've gone to some impact funds, but primarily we go to individuals. And we're actually in the middle of a round now where I can't share the names yet, but the founders of most of the world's large tech companies, lots of celebrities and so forth, and also regular people are investing in this round because they want to do just what Audrey's saying, which is they want, by investing in a company like Change, you can do more good than you would do by donating money to many nonprofits because it scales a lot faster, and you can get a better than market rate return on your investment. And those opportunities are rare, and we see it as our job to make it less rare, right? We're trying to pave the way for the generations of companies that will come after us who want to prove that you can do good and do well, make money. And the other thing that's really fascinating about this space is that companies like ours and others like us are also shifting the incentives for large corporations to do good too. Yeah. And those are the companies that Audrey's investors also benefit from. And actually I'll share an example of a petition example. We had a classroom of kids in California who petitioned Crayola to make a recycling program for their markers. How many of you have bought, not that many people, but how many people have bought markers from Crayola? Okay, and how many people have thrown away those markers from Crayola into the trash? Yeah, so a classroom of kids said, you need to do a recycling program. We buy and throw away all these markers. And they got 90,000 signatures on their petition. Wow. And Crayola didn't do anything about it. But what happened is the CEO...
Does anybody hear from Crayola?
The CEO of a company called Dixon Ticonderoga. Anybody know what this company does? Yeah, they make No. 2 pencils. They also make markers, as it turns out. And they said, if they won't do it, we will. And it became a huge brand win for their company. He called a press conference with this classroom of kids and said, we're going to do a recycling program for our markers. And then, as soon as they did that, Crayola started a recycling program for their markers. So my point is only that incentives are shifting over time, and regular everyday people are making it important for companies to do good as part of what they do. They'll build better brands, they'll attract and retain better talent, and pretty soon money will be pouring into those companies because they not only make money, but they also do good.
Yeah, what a great story. Thank you. When it comes to social change, probably one of the most difficult things is being able to showcase impact. I would love to hear from both of you how you each do that in your respective organizations. Obviously coming from a very different viewpoint, but.
So internally or?
With either way.
Well, I think, so given that my organization is one that is, it's a for-profit, pretty hardcore organization, I'd say it's really two things. One is about really being very clear about the business case, and the other is about the social impact and sort of how they reinforce each other. And it's not always intuitive, and it's not always an easy communication story, because again, I think people, especially people who are used to being sort of hardcore analytical financial folks, when they say, oh, you're talking about something social, they immediately start thinking with their philanthropy hat on. And so it's really hard to kind of get them to keep that lens in. So we talk a lot about the business case, and just as you've said, so what are those long-term values? There are an increasing number of great studies out that we oversight all the time that shows that those good companies that are well-run and whatnot actually do better when they go to the stock market. They can issue stock or debt at a lower cost of capital, but that's kind of a dry story for most people, right? So I think one of the other, so I guess one example that would be a good thing that we've talked about is we actually did do an investment called the Healthy Futures Fund. Because we looked at the problems, right here in our city and all around the country, that in America, it's unfortunately a really sad fact that poor people have worse health outcomes than rich people. And it's absolutely no secret as to why. I mean, it is literally just because they're in poor neighborhoods that have fewer resources. There's actually been extensive studies that said the single most important social determinant of your health is not your genetic code, it's your zip code.
Wow.
Which is crazy and outrageous. And so, but you see in poor communities that very often, even now that we have better access in America to healthcare coverage, it still doesn't mean that if I'm a poor kid in a poor neighborhood that there's convenient health care. And if you have to take 2 buses and a taxi to get to the nearest healthcare facility, you're not going to go for primary care. So we actually said we got to do something about this. We put together a fund in partnership with the philanthropy and in partnership with a nonprofit that said we will come in as investors to build affordable housing, but if and only if it is actually tightly tied to a healthcare facility, an affordable healthcare facility. And so instead of a shop where you might get cigarettes and candy or tattoos or whatever in sort of the ground floor of some of these housing complexes, we're putting in healthcare centers. And what we're seeing there is the ability for private sector capital to partner with philanthropy to get to a social goal. And I believe that so this is to bring it back to the story we tell internally. One of the important stories we say is, look, we're not doing this just because we care about the impact. We believe actually that this will show something, I think, even bigger, which is that low-income communities can be great credit risks. That low-income communities, if you serve them well with the things that we all want to have, are going to do better. And frankly, it's in your selfish interest as an investor to want this, because if you have convenient health care, you will have fewer illnesses in the family, you will have fewer critical medical needs, you'll have fewer people needing to not go to work to take care of a sick family member, fewer people losing their jobs, fewer people not paying rent, and you'll have less turnover and less expenses. So that frankly, you should think about health care for your tenants as a way to improve your own credit quality and returns. So that kind of full circle.
Clearly she's passionate about this issue. We have only a couple minutes left, so I want to first turn it over to see if there are any questions from the audience, and if there's time, we can have you answer the question.
Hi, I admire both of your drive and what you're doing for the world. I wanted to know, okay, you have this great idea, and you want to run with it. What's step one?
I mean, you're probably better suited to do this one, but I think, step one is making sure that you're really clear about what your idea is and that you get feedback from other people. The best thing I found in terms of being an entrepreneur myself, is feedback, right? And there's this sort of saying in Silicon Valley, like if your first version doesn't fail, you haven't launched fast enough. The idea is like get things out there, start prototyping, start getting feedback. Even, I don't know if your idea is a physical product or an organization, but make the smallest version of it and try to get people giving you feedback so that you can make it consistently better. And then you'll get proof, right? If it's something people want, people will use it. They'll be interested in it. And if it's not, they won't. And it's sort of a hard lesson. That's why I say my startup failed 3 times, because there's also a difference between something that people kind of like and something that people love. And so what you're trying to do to be a successful entrepreneur is build something people love.
And something incredibly unique.
It doesn't even have to be unique necessarily. It needs to be better than something else,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
And in fact, lots of companies get surprised by other people usurping things that are slightly less unique, but just more delightful than what they do. But
That's
that
the
would
key,
be my
the delight.
best. Exactly.
My name is Vandana Arcot, and I work in the nonprofit world a lot. My question is, how important is sustainability to impact at scale? And how can you take a negative, have you both had any negative experiences that you have turned around and made positive? Because we all know negative failures happen all the time, and it's fairly common. So have you had a positive spin on things? Thank you.
Maybe I'll take the first half of the question, because I think you've got a better answer for the second half of the question. I think that sustainability absolutely includes not only sort of your environmental components and your social components, but also your financial and economic sustainability, right? Because you might have the best idea in the world, whether that's a company or a nonprofit. You have the best idea in the world, and if you can't make ends meet so that you can't make more of it or provide more services, it doesn't, at some point, it doesn't really matter how wonderful your environmental or social impact is if you can't actually get your product or your service or the good that you're doing out the door. So for us, economic sustainability is a core kind of prime part of what sustainable investing entails.
Yeah, the failure part of the question is an interesting one. We actually have a tradition at our company we call the Festival of Failure, because the idea is like, again, if you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And so we say, like, if you're going to fail, fail big, make a celebration, let everybody know what you did, because then not just you learn from your own mistakes, everybody learns from your mistakes. And so, yeah, I highly encourage failure. And the faster you recognize, celebrate, and move on, the better. I wouldn't dwell in the failures, but yeah.
My name is Linda Zango-Haley, and my question is for Change.org. I'm a proponent of yours, and I want to understand your revenue stream. I don't understand how you pay for yourself.
Yeah, great question.
And she has a nice dress on, so.
And shoes.
I bought these shoes actually with our country director from Madrid, who, when I went to Madrid to visit them, instead of taking me to see all the sights, took me shopping. So.
Well, considering we are in a showroom for shoes, how appropriate.
So we have 2 revenue models. One is working with nonprofits and companies to help them find new supporters, primarily nonprofits. In the US, nonprofit organizations spend $30 billion a year trying to find new supporters and donors. And they primarily do it through direct paper mail, which takes generally 3 to 4 years to return a positive return on their investment. We can help them connect with people on Change.org who've already taken action, expressed interest in a cause. So what happens is we have sponsored campaigns. You might sign a regular campaign, and then we say, you might also be interested in this sponsored campaign from UNICEF or the World Wildlife Fund or Oxfam. And if you connect to them, we take some revenue from them so that they can acquire a new donor, a new potential donor. And again, what we're doing, to us, it's very mission aligned, because we also are helping the world's nonprofits get more efficient at finding the right people to donate to their causes. The second part of our revenue stream comes from everyday users who can chip in to promote petitions they really care about. So you might see after a petition you signed, hey, chip in $5 so that more people can see this campaign and help it win.
Well, I wanted to thank both Audrey Choi from Morgan Stanley and Jennifer Dulski from Change.org, and thank all of you for paying good attention. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you, ladies.